Stop and think about the last time you used a disposable item made of plastic. More importantly, how often have you thrown away something made of plastic? When you throw away a plastic container, probably most often some type of water or flavored drink bottle, do you even think about whether to toss it into a recycling container? Plastic is all around us because it is so versatile, durable, and cheap to produce. As a consequence, plastic production has increased exponentially over the last couple of decades. According to Consolidated Resources Incorporated, a leader in commercial and industrial recycling, the world produces close to 350 million tons of plastic each year. Nearly half of the plastic ever manufactured has been made since the year 2000, possibly after many of you were born. More than 40% of the plastic produced is for packaging, which is used once and then disposed of in landfills, taking up to 1,000 years to completely decompose. None of us can imagine a world without plastic, and it will more than likely never be so, at least not in any of our lifetimes. After all, plastic can also be a life-saving miracle when used in medical applications. But it also has the potential of becoming a severe detriment to the planet if not handled properly. Because of its versatility and ever-widening uses as opposed to the potential effects that it may have on our environment, the topic of plastic recycling has become more and more controversial. I am Mark Eganhouse. Recycling in general has become more and more important to me as I've grown older. I have done research on this topic, especially since recently becoming a college student and being fortunate enough to have taken an environmental studies class. In particular, I believe it is important that we know not only the advantages, but also the less talked about disadvantages of recycling plastics, so we can make an informed decision as to whether or not it should be important to us as individuals. Plastics are used to manufacture an incredible number of products we use every day, such as food and beverage containers, trash and grocery bags, and what we're probably most familiar with, water bottles. One could easily reason that we should recycle plastic because there is just so much of it. It is some people's view that recycling plastic should be a vital part of our environmental efforts to save our planet. Every year, close to 8 million tons of garbage, mostly plastic, ends up in the oceans. The plastic waste that ends up in the world's oceans finds its way to one of 5 accumulation zones. The largest one is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's 2 times the size of Texas and contains an estimated 80,000 tons of plastic, according to Consolidated Resources Incorporated. According to a 2019 Environmental Science and Policy article called Plastics at Sea, Treaty for a Global Solution to Marine Plastic Pollution, an estimated 150 million tons of plastics have accumulated in the world's oceans, and the problem has been compounded by overloaded waste management and recycling systems that are unable to cope with rising plastic production. Marine plastic pollution has consequences on the Earth's environment and biodiversity. It also affects industries such as tourism, shipping, and fishing, and more importantly, represents a potential risk for food security and human health. Global plastic production in 2017 amounted to about 335 million tons, and estimates from 2014 predict a doubling within 20 years. Waste management measures cannot cope with the increasing plastic production, which has resulted in ongoing plastic litter and microplastics entering the oceans. Many of you may be wondering, how am I contributing to plastics in our oceans by throwing away a water bottle or food container here in Iowa? The majority of marine litter consists of packaging and small pieces of unidentifiable plastics or polystyrene, one of the most widely used kinds of plastic that primarily originates from land-based sources. These include general public litter, pollution from industry, harbors, and unprotected landfills and dumps located near the coast or waterways like the Mississippi River. Rivers are a major transport pathway for marine plastics, from which an estimated 1.1 to 2.4 million tons of plastic waste enter the ocean each year. Most plastics are age-resistant and only minimally degrade biologically, staying in landfills, waterways, and oceans for long periods of time, traveling large distances. The longevity in the marine environment is unknown, but estimates range from hundreds to thousands of years. Over 260 marine species suffer negative effects of marine plastic pollution through entanglement or ingestion. Plastic bags are often mistaken for food by sea turtles, as they resemble jellyfish in the water. A total of 557 species are documented with records of entanglement in or ingestion of marine plastic debris. I recommend that each of you watch a short CNN YouTube video about Midway Island in the North Pacific, which is 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. Think about that, 2,000 miles from the nearest land. It's called Midway, a Plastic Island. It gives a great perspective on the impact of our plastic waste when it reaches even the remotest ecosystems in the furthest reaches of our vast oceans. Moreover, plastic pollution has a potential risk for human health. Various chemicals used in plastic manufacturing are toxic to animals and humans. Microplastic particles that are ingested by marine species reach humans over the food chain. Larry West, an environmental journalist, wrote a 2019 article for thoughtco.com titled, "Why Recycle Plastics?" In it, he states, recycling plastics also reduces the consumption of non-renewable energy and resources needed to create plastic, such as water, petroleum, natural gas, and coal. And that according to a 2009 study by researchers Peter Glick and Heather Cooley from the Pacific Institute of California, a pint-sized bottle of water requires about 2,000 times as much energy to produce as the same amount of tap water. As a direct result of oil consumption reduction, emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases drastically decrease. Greenhouse gases are emitted while burning non-renewable fossil fuels to make plastic. Since recycling plastic lowers oil consumption in the manufacturing of new plastic, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions too. In other words, recycling plastic helps mitigate global warming and reduces air pollution. Plastic recycling helps keep disposable products out of landfills. However, unlike other materials, recycled plastics aren't able to continually serve the same purpose. So it is some people's view that the benefits of recycling plastics are too minimal, and the processes to do so actually pose an even greater environmental threat. Each piece of recycled plastic represents a potential environmental threat. A 2017 article by Dennis Hartman for Sciencing.com titled "The Disadvantages of Recycling Plastics" states, "The process of melting down and reducing plastic produces VOCs, volatile organic compounds, which are vapors or gases in the air that can harm plant and animal life near the industrial site. The heat needed to melt plastics also generates carbon emissions, which contribute to global warming. The same VOCs that cause plastic recycling to harm the environment can also present health threats to humans. Plastic resin, part of the manufacturing and recycling process, comes from petroleum, which can leach into food stored in recycled plastic containers. The amount of chemicals that we consume is based on the type of plastic container and other factors like temperature and the plastic's age. Because of the potential health threats recycled plastics pose, much recycling is only downcycling. The plastic, instead of becoming a new container, becomes a different, less useful product. A 2020 article by Hiba Sofar of Alexandria University for Science Online titled Plastic Recycling Advantages and Disadvantages states, after plastic is recycled once, it is very rarely suitable for a second round of recycling, so the material will end up as waste anyway. Downcycling simply delays the process. Plastic recycling requires separate factories, resulting in more pollution and energy consumption to clean, sort, store, and transport. In addition, plastic recycling does not guarantee good quality products anyway. So as you can see, a case can be made that recycling plastics is the right thing to do, especially because it is used so much and so universally around the world, with the potential for detrimental impact on the Earth's ecosystems. But a case can just as easily be made that the processes needed to do so would have an equally recognizable potential to cause harm. I am personally in favor of doing whatever we can to maintain a healthy environment for not only humans, but every species on Earth. Our Earth's ecosystems are so interdependent and fragile that to not do so would be morally wrong due to potential impacts on future generations. A 2018 article by Laura Parker for National Geographic states, of the more than 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic that we have produced from 1950 until now, 6.3 billion metric tons has become plastic waste. The vast majority, 79%, is accumulating in landfills or remaining useless in the natural environment as litter. If present trends continue, by 2050, there will be 12 billion metric tons of plastic in landfills. Of that, a large amount will end up in our seas. It is predicted that by mid-century, the oceans will contain more plastic waste than fish, ton for ton. Often when I've talked to people about recycling a plastic beverage container, the response is one of being apathetic, which isn't surprising since most believe it just ends up in the trash anyway. I have a good friend who works in my hometown street department, which collects garbage on one day of the week and recycling on another. When I decided to speak on this topic, I asked him if recycling is just a waste of time. Does most of it end up in the landfill anyway? His response was encouraging. In the past, he said that may have been so, but with newer separation techniques and processes, recycling has become much more efficient and productive. What we put out for recycling on designated days goes to a local recycling center to be processed appropriately. My hopes are that by listening to this speech, you have gained a better insight on the importance of plastic recycling. With the amount of not only plastic waste, but waste in general that our country and the world produces every day, we really need to be cognizant of the impacts that waste can have on our fragile environment. Our actions not only affect us, but many other living species on this home we call Earth. So I ask you again, can you think of the last time you didn't see, use, or maybe even more importantly, throw away something made of plastic? When you throw away a plastic bottle, do you even think about whether to toss it in a recycling container? Recycling all the plastics we produce seems like a no-brainer, but it is so much easier to listen to the few disadvantages and take the easy way out. Why bother takes much less effort. But is that the world you want to live in? Wouldn't it be nice to live in a world where we not only think about our own future, but the future of all other living things? I hope you take something from what you've learned here today, and the next time you are about to throw plastic in the trash, you instead look for a recycling container. Many other species on this earth do not have a choice. Their homes, and much too often, stomachs are filling up with our plastic. Thank you.